Hi everyone, like I promised last week, let me show you some footage from my second research trip few months back to Poland. First, an 8-hour flight from JFK International Airport to Warsaw, the capital of Poland. A beautiful city, not that tremendously easy to navigate on foot, as the city is kind of stretched out, and if you want to visit few places, it requires a lot of walking. So public transportation is a must. And so that is what I did on this trip. And in fact, I think I used every method of travel other than a bike. I have used many buses, especially between cities, trams, the metro, and trains. But look, on the trains themselves, for example, even the seats have these really pretty cool designs, like with a mermaid, for example, which is the symbol of the city of Warsaw, its coat of arms. Now, what you will see mostly in this video are pictures and not really videos, as again, I was not thinking about YouTube at that time just yet. And I took some short videos, but the quality of them was not that great, as I changed the settings on my phone on purpose, simply because I needed to save as much battery as I could. The primary focus for me was using Google Maps, in case I got lost, and taking pictures of documents and archives, if I was allowed. I always prefer to take pictures of documents and read everything in the comfort of my house, instead of in the archive itself. So, I almost have nothing from the city of Warsaw itself, as my time in the city was very limited, and that is where I spend most of my time in an archive. But eventually I did rent a car and travel to a few other places. Here is my rental car. Now, why would I need a luxury SUV like this Volvo, you might ask? And the simple reason is that I actually rented a different car online. I think it was like a 6-year-old Volkswagen, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted to do this as cheaply as I could. But the day I went to pick up the car, it was in the repair shop. And so the owner of the rental place, after questioning exactly who I am, why I needed it, and things like that, gave me this car as a replacement for the same price. So I got very, very lucky. It worked out in my favor, or so I thought. Then I had to pull into a gas station for the first time, and I realized that the car is my curse after spending close to $100 filling up an empty tank. But another city I traveled to was Białystok, which is about 120 miles away from Warsaw, another city with an archive I needed to use. Again, just very few pictures, as the archives here were also my priority. But here's something cool, the Branicki Palace, built in its current form for Jan Klemens Branicki. There's also a Branicki Palace in the city of Warsaw. After all, he was one of the wealthiest noblemen in Poland in the 18th century. Once I collected all the information I needed, well, hopefully, and I still had my rental car for 2 more days, I quickly visited few other cool places between the cities of Warsaw and Białystok. For instance, a small town of Nowogród, where we have this T-34 tank, which is overlooking the Narew River. And next to it, there is a 57mm anti-armor artillery from the 1940s. But the reason I wanted to stop by in these areas is because here you also have a system of these bunkers, of these defenses, which I wanted to take a look at and explore a bit. But the reason I'm using archives in Poland is because I wrote 2 articles on Polish history, both of them focusing on the military and the preparations for the Second World War. And I have one more idea, one more article, which I would like to research and write on. When it comes to Poland, especially the year 1939, there was a lot of misinformation and myths surrounding the war, things like the Polish cavalry charging on German armor. Now, like I even wrote in my article a few years back, I think this myth is debunked, but there is still this perception of Poland which was weak and unrealistic in their views of how to fight a future war, which I feel is not really accurate. One thing that is many times forgotten is that throughout the 1920s and even early 1930s, Poland saw the Soviet Union as a bigger threat to the country than Germany. Hence, its military plans and defenses were focused in that direction. Therefore, these bunkers were, at least I believe, originally designed to defend Poland against the Soviet attack. But with the rise of Hitler in Germany, beginning in like 1934, Germany took priority in Polish defensive measures. In some places, you see these bunkers destroyed, and it is kind of foolish and dangerous to try to go underneath it. But of course, I am sometimes a bit foolish. But to me, it's just amazing to explore these and even to see how they were built. Walking along the Narew River, there are beautiful views as you see, and you even get to see on the right the Skansen-Kurpiowski Museum, which is really an awesome place to see how people lived in the region at the end of the 1800s. Although I believe there are a few structures from other time periods like the early 20th century, but definitely a place to stop by and see how life was like 130 years ago or so. I remember I did not have time to go there that day because they were closing soon or something like that, I don't remember. But I went to another place, and there I was able to check out some of the traditional housing and history of the region. And not just the museum itself, but also the village, as you see a lot of art and wood carvings on the streets. It is really such an amazing, interesting walk that I probably would be able to spend a whole day if I could, but unfortunately time was always against me. And there were 2 other cities I wanted to walk through. First, the city of Łomża. Here I went to the Queen Bona's Mountain, which is the original location of the city, and a place where you get some gorgeous views of the Narew River below and the surrounding landscape. I wish I could show you more of the city, as I walked here for a few hours. However, like I mentioned, at that time I never thought about YouTube, and therefore I don't have a tremendous amount of footage to show you. I mean, I did take more pictures, but these were really of things like the concrete buildings and things that I felt that I could use as slides in my classes when I teach, for example, European history or Russian history. So if I only really sort of had this drive for a project like YouTube at that time, this would definitely be a different video. But still, I figured I could show some of it. And, you know, out of like, I think 500 photos or so, I tried to choose the best ones that I could make a video on. But towards the end, there was one place I visited, one of the abandoned Tsarist forts. Around Łomża, there are 5 of them, which date back to the 1880s, and they were meant to serve as defensive positions against Prussia back in the days. Now, from a perspective of time, maybe it was a bit foolish to explore it by myself, almost in the evening hours, because it is a rather isolated place and it was my first time doing so. Therefore, I do not know what to expect. But what I found doing things for this channel is that my curiosity always wins over my worries of going into places. And finally, the city of Ostrołęka, which is about 75 miles away from Warsaw. On the street, I saw two Fiat Type 126P, which began production in the early 1970s and became like a cultural icon of a car in Poland. The engine was able to provide just above 20 horsepower. But if you were brave enough to handle that power behind the wheel, then in the late 1980s, the power was increased to almost 30 horsepower. What a beast! Put 4 adults inside of the car and you can almost make it over the hill. But all jokes aside, I love these communist era cars, as I got a model at home and even one of a Christmas tree ornament, not to mention a collection of other ones. This allows me to be a true historian and at the same time remain a big kid inside. In the city, I did have time to visit 2 interesting places. First, the Museum of Cursed Soldiers. The name Cursed Soldiers has its origins in the 1990s after the fall of communism and refers to those who fought against Soviet occupation of Poland during the Second World War and after, those who the communist authorities tried to erase from the memory and the record. There are some interesting displays on the inside, like replicas of different uniforms, guns, and even things like these different batons used by the police or prison guards during the communist years. Especially the third one from the left seems messed up, right? A wooden baton covered with barbed wire. A tool, or a similar one at least, which might have been used to extract confessions, for example. Inside of the museum, there's also a gun range, which you can shoot different guns. Now, they are not actual bullets, but rather like a laser thing. However, the guns themselves are like real ones in terms of weight and handling. So that was pretty cool. And then, not that far away, is the mausoleum of the Battle of Ostrołęka. In 1795, Poland was partitioned and completely erased from the map of Europe for 123 years, until 1918. However, in that time period, many sacrificed and died for Poland to be reborn. One of those major moments was the November uprising in 1831 against Russia, which this place is dedicated to. Outside, there are a few military pieces from that era, like artillery. Inside, there are interesting visuals and a short movie summarizing the fighting in the region in 1831, and you can even go to the top, from which you have a great view below. In fact, there is so much to talk about that it was difficult for me to put this video together, as I probably could spend hours talking about all these places and history behind them. Although I would need to have more pictures and videos to show you. So if I do go back one more time, I will this time provide a more extensive video. Or maybe even few videos. All said and done, it was time to take the 4:30 in the morning bus back to Warsaw and make it for my flight back home. And now, after all these months of sitting on all the information I collected, it is finally time for me to slowly begin putting my next publication together. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon. Take care, everyone.